Tonight, you will journey far below the misty mountains. In the deep veins of stone where light has never touched, a war stirs, old as fire, patient as stone. There lies Tharôkh the Silent, a blind dwarf of Clan Tholgren who walks without sight. Guided only by sound, memory, and the whispering pulse of the earth. When ancient drakes awaken from molten slumber to claim the underdeep, and cave trolls rise with brutish hunger, Tharôkh must find a way to lead his kin through a world of tremors and roaring flame. This is a tale of shadow and resonance, of battles that echo like thunder in your dreams, of a hero who sees without eyes and listens, where others scream. If you find peace in the echoes of Middle-earth, make sure to gently subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss a story before bedtime. Now, close your eyes and let the stones sing to you. Echoes in the deep. Beneath the bones of the world, silence is never truly still. The stone hums, it murmurs, it breathes, and Tharôkh could hear it all. He sat cross-legged on a ledge of broken granite, the edge of his beard brushing the cold floor. The air was damp with the breath of the deeps, carrying with it the scent of flint, iron, and something else now. Something new. A sour trace, like sulfur folded in wet moss. His fingers traced the edges of a carved runestone beside him. He didn't need to see it, he knew it. This was the southern edge of the Forgotten Hall, carved 500 years ago, when the dwarves of Tholgren fled the upper mines and burrowed deeper, farther into the veins of the misty mountains, chasing rumors of untouched ore. That ore had run dry. But the people had remained. Tharôkh had never seen a single star. Not once. He was born, without sight and in a world of darkness, but he heard stars in the stone, and now, something else. Boom! The sound came again. Soft, far off. A pulse beneath the mountain. He tilted his head. He counted the seconds. And there, a whisper later. A tremor. So slight, most would miss it, but not him. He reached behind him and knocked his hammer twice against the ledge. Ta, ta. Moments passed, and then, tock, tock, a reply from below. His cousin, Hreldi, scouting the tunnels. Tharôkh stood and began walking, one palm trailing, along the wall, the other brushing the floor with the haft of his walking hammer. His steps were slow, careful. He didn't need light. He needed rhythm. Every echo that returned was a map in his mind. The lower galleries were quiet today, too quiet. Since last week's quake, 3 shafts had collapsed. 5 dwarves still hadn't returned. And though some believed they were crushed in the fall, Tharôkh knew better. He'd heard something move in the echo that night. Something huge, something breathing. As he approached the spiral gate, a vast round corridor coiled like a snail shell, he stopped. The air had changed again, drier, warmer. That same bitter tang danced on his tongue. Hreldi was waiting, boots scraping faintly on the stone. "Tharôkh," he muttered, voice hushed. "You came fast. You called loud." The cousins shared a short silence, speaking in the way dwarves often do, without words. Tharôkh tilted his head. Still no sign of boar or Yari? Hreldi shook his head. "Nothing, but I heard it too this time. The rumble." Tharôkh took a slow breath. "It's not a quake. It's wings." Hreldi's silence stretched long. Then, "You're sure, Si?" He turned his head toward the stone, tapping the floor lightly with his hammer. They beat like a forge bellows, slow and deep. No rhythm of rockfall. This is something alive. The two descended further, stepping into a tunnel known as the Echo Spine, so called because one step here could sing for 100 feet, designed to warn of intruders. But now even the echoes felt wrong. They passed the markers for Hol Varnul, an old smithy now half-flooded. As they crossed the arch, Tharôkh raised a hand. "Stop!" He knelt. Thunk, thunk, thunk. There, again. Not just wings, but feet, massive, clawed, and many, and then, say, scream. It cut through the rock like a knife, dwarvish, faint, distant, boar. Tharôkh didn't wait. He launched forward, hammer in hand. Come. They reached the edge of a chasm, one of the abandoned melt shafts that descended who knows how deep. And across it, across the yawning black, Boar was crawling on hands and knees, face bloody, eyes wide, and behind him, the glow came, a low red pulsing now, then flaring, firelight and a shadow. Hreldi froze. By the Stonefather. The thing emerged, long as a mining train, black and gold scales pulsing with heat. A drake, older than memory, wings folded, using claws to slither and climb. Eyes like burning coins. Run, Boar cried. Tharôkh turned, hammer raised, stepping between his kin and the beast. Back, get him across. The drake opened its maw and roared. The sound was terrible, a rolling, thunderous scream of heat and rage. It shook the walls, cracked loose, stone. But Tharôkh did not move. He stood still, listening. Behind the roar he heard its breathing, its claw scraping, its wings adjusting balance. The drake would lunge left. He spun before it struck, swinging his hammer in a wide arc. It connected, clang, with the beast's jaw, sending sparks flying. The beast recoiled, hissing, and Tharôkh stepped back, guiding Boar by the shoulder. They fled up the tunnel, fire licking at their heels. Back at the guard post near the black stair, the dwarves gathered. "You're certain it was a worm?" asked the commander, Dulgrim. "A drake, yes," Tharôkh answered. His beard was singed, his hammer blackened. Dulgrim frowned. They were supposed to be extinct. Tharôkh tilted his head. "Then the mountain has not been listening." Hreldi nodded. "We saw fire, Commander. This was no troll." "And trolls," Boar added, voice shaking. "I saw two, following it, like pets." Silence fell. The mountain hummed again, as if agreeing. Dulgrim turned toward Tharôkh. "What do you hear now?" The blind dwarf paused, hand to the wall. "They're not done," he whispered. "The Wyrms are moving, and this was not the only one." In the dark beneath the world, war had begun, and Tharôkh the Silent was the only one who could hear its song. The fire below. The old shaft was silent, not the silence of peace, but of something listening back. Tharôkh stood on the edge of the iron descent, his fingertips brushing the rough handholds of the vertical tunnel. Above, the guard post buzzed with whispers and nervous hammer checks. Below, nothing but a slow, steady heat rising like a sigh from the bones of the earth. "We go in teams of 3, Commander Dulgrim ordered. "No lanterns, no torches. They hunt by light and warmth." He paused, eyes flicking toward Tharôkh. "If I accept you," Tharôkh nodded once. "The stone guides me." And down he went. The iron descent was old, abandoned since the Second Age, when fire ran wild through the deep shafts and collapsed 3 levels of forge tunnels. The walls still bore scorch marks and collapsed struts. Charred bones lingered in forgotten alcoves, but Tharôkh felt no fear, only presence. He counted his steps, traced vibrations, tracked the breaths of his kin behind him. Hreldi, silent and tense, and Myerla, a scout with light steps and a quicker temper. Every 10 feet, Tharôkh tapped the wall with his hammer. "Tak, tak, tak," echoes replied. Cracks in stone, caverns, hollow bends, all laid bare in sound. "There," he whispered, stopping. "A fork, one wide, one thin." Hreldi leaned in. "Which way?" Tharôkh tilted his head. "Left, narrow path, it hums." Myerla frowned. "Hums?" The air vibrates differently. Heat builds. That's where the worm passed. The tunnel narrowed, forcing them into a crouch. The deeper they crept, the warmer it became, and then, just ahead, a faint glow. Not flame, molten stone. They emerged onto a broken ledge overlooking a collapsed forge chamber, half filled with glowing magma. Steel beams hung like rib bones over the churning pool, but the real horror lay across the lava. Black shapes, twisting, sleeping, coiled. 3 worms drakes, long and lean, scales flickering within a light. One had its head dipped into the molten pool, snoring softly, steam rising in slow gusts. Merla exhaled. Stone preserve us. But Tharôkh wasn't looking at them. He was listening. There was something else, below the worms, beneath the lava, a deeper rhythm, not flame, not beast metal. "Do you hear it?" he murmured. Hreldi frowned. "What?" "A forge, still lit." They circled around the ledge, keeping to the shadows. Merla led now, scanning for traps. Tharôkh kept one hand on the wall, feeling every tremor. Halfway around, they heard the sound, metal on stone. Scrape, scrape. They froze. A cave troll, huge, pale. One eye glazed over with age. It was dragging a corpse, dwarven by the beard. Merla cursed under her breath, but Tharôkh raised a hand. "Listen," the troll was humming. Not words, a tune, a dwarven mining song. Hreldi's mouth fell open. "It knows our songs?" "No," Tharôkh whispered. "It remembers." Suddenly the troll froze. It sniffed the air, turned. The trio flattened against the stone, but Tharôkh stood still. He could feel the troll's confusion. It couldn't see them, because they didn't move, they didn't breathe, they didn't echo. The troll snorted, dropped the body, and lumbered away. Silence returned. Merla shook her head. "They're all wrong. The trolls, the worms, they're not hunting us. They're guarding something." Tharôkh nodded. "Something old." They reached the far end of the forge chamber, ducking into a low passage. The walls here were smooth, too smooth. "Polished," Merla muttered. "By heat." They crept forward until the passage opened into a dome-shaped chamber, and there, at the center, an anvil, enormous, ancient, carved of black steel, rimmed with runes. It floated, hovering slightly above a magma vent, and around it, a circle of obsidian spikes like a crown of thorns. Tharôkh's breath caught. The Heartforge. Hreldi blinked. The what? A myth. A forge said to be lit by the breath of the earth itself, fueled by magma, tempered by silence. It's said only those who cannot see can find it. Merla stared. And it's real. But Tharôkh was already kneeling. The stone here sang, a soft, steady hum, low, resonant, alive. Then the sound changed. Not a tremor, not a wing, but a voice. It rumbled, not through air but through bone, regn. A wordless vibration, old as the mountain. Tharôkh whispered, "It speaks." Hreldi drew his axe. "What?" The worm. "One of them. It knows we're here." A deep growl echoed behind them. The drakes were waking. Merla's eyes widened. "We need to go now," but Tharôkh stood tall, hammer in hand, head tilted. "No," he stepped forward. "I can speak back." He raised his hammer, tapped it 3 times on the floor. Tock, 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 then again, different rhythm. Tock, 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 tock. The stone responded. "Why? Are you here?" The echo wasn't words. It was intent, shape, feeling. Tharôkh exhaled slowly. "We seek to pass, not to claim." Silence then. "You echo differently." Tharôkh lowered his hammer. "I do not see. I listen." The hum deepened. "Then you are closer to stone than flame. Leave, before the others wake." They fled. Up, back through the narrow tunnels, past the whispering troll song, past the heat and the slumbering fire. When they reached the guard post again, the other dwarves stared, wide-eyed. "You're alive! What did you find?" Tharôkh's voice was quiet. "The Wyrms have made pact with the trolls. They guard the Heartforge." Dulgrim frowned. "To what end?" Tharôkh tilted his head. "Not conquest." "Then what?" He turned toward the stone, listened, and smiled grimly. "They are waiting." Songs of stone and flame. There are songs that live only in silence, songs written not with ink or rune, but with flame, hammer, and the courage of kin. And tonight, those songs began again. Tharôkh stood at the mouth of the old council chamber. The stone arches above him were cracked, dark with soot and veined with silver. Braziers hissed low with rune light, dim to keep the Wyrms at bay. Inside, the elders murmured, worried, scared. 3 Wyrms, one said, and they're not roaming, they're nesting. Aye. And the trolls speaking songs as the world turned on its head. They guard the Heartforge. That changes everything, said Dulgrim, calm but firm. It's a relic, we cannot let them hold it. But we cannot attack it, snapped another. Not directly. Their fire will melt every plate of armor we own. Then we don't. Fight them with fire, Tharôkh said softly. His voice cut through the noise like a miner's chisel. We fight with stone, with silence, with sound. The room fell still. He stepped forward, hammer in hand, fingers brushing its haft. I spoke with one, he said. A worm, it answered through the stone, it listens. You spoke with it, an elder scoffed. What did it say? Please leave me and my troll friends to nap in peace. It said, I echoed differently. It warned us away. Dulgrim narrowed his eyes. It's not just guarding the forge. Tharôkh nodded. No, they're waiting for something. Or someone. And so the dwarves made their plan, not to charge, not to fight in open flame, but to feel and listen and strike, only when the mountain whispered yes. The days passed slowly. Scout teams mapped the tunnels in silence, each echo carefully, recorded by Tharôkh. He charted them by pitch and rhythm, crafting a sound map of the Wyrms' lair, not walls, not corridors, but chambers of resonance. He moved through the dark like a ripple on water. Where others stepped loudly, he tapped gently. Where others sought light, he listened to flickers in the stone. He began to teach them. Close your eyes, he told Merla. What do you hear? She frowned. Nothing, he smiled. Try again. They sat in the long hollow, a tunnel known for its whisper carry. Tharôkh tapped his hammer twice. The echo returned, long, slow, and slightly warped. Now you. Hear that, the warble? That means there's a fissure nearby, a heat pocket. She tilted her head, so we could use that. He nodded. Collapse the ceiling above it. Let the heat vent out. Smoke a worm without facing its flame. Marla grinned, a war of echoes. By the 7th day, the dwarves had mapped 5 potential ambush points, choke points, heat vents, resonant chambers, all ready to fall at a whisper's signal. And still, the Wyrms slumbered, waiting. On the 8th day, the silence broke. A young runner returned from a supply shaft, pale and wide-eyed. Attack. Trolls, east shaft, they've moved. Tharôkh was already moving. He sprinted by sound alone, hammer tapping out his path, breath measured, ears tuned to every vibration, and then roars. Not one, many. The trolls had grown bold. They came in packs now, smarter, hungrier. The dwarves met them at the edge of the forge path, axes flashing, shields locked. But the trolls were not clumsy. They moved like soldiers, organized, coordinated. Something had taught them. Tharôkh leapt into the fray. He didn't swing wildly, he listened. Stomp, drag, roar, one to the left, tall, weak on its right foot. He pivoted, hammered its knee. The troll fell, roaring, another behind. He ducked, slammed his haft upward, catching it under the jaw. The stone echoed. The mountain was watching. Suddenly the air trembled, not from the trolls, but from below. A Wyrms call. It rolled through the tunnels like a deep breath. And the trolls froze, then turned and fled. The dwarves stood panting, bloodied, confused. They retreated? No, Tharôkh murmured. They were called back. He stepped forward, placing a hand on the wall, and listened. Not to words, but to intention. They're moving their nest. That night, Tharôkh returned to the long hollow alone. He sat cross-legged, hammer in lap, breathing slow, and tapped, once, twice, 3 times. The stone replied, not just with echoes, but with music. Low, layered, rhythmic. The Wyrms were speaking again, and this time the words were clearer. Ash remembers fire. He tapped again. What do you wait for? Silence. Then, one who sees without flame. He felt a chill, even in the warm tunnel. Me. The hum deepened. Not you alone. The mountains. Memory. You carry its voice. And so Tharôkh sang, not with words, not with breath, but with hammer, stone, and heart. A song of halls fallen, of kin lost, of flames survived. The Wyrms did not answer in kind, but they listened. Back in the war hall, Dulgrim approached. Your plan, it's ready? Tharôkh nodded. Tomorrow we strike, not to slay us, but to speak. And if they do not listen, he raised his hammer. Then the stone will. Beneath the Black Bell, at the base of the ancient mountain, beneath a forgotten tower carved long ago in the first age of Durin's folk, there hung a bell black as obsidian, forged of star metal, engraved in rune song. It had not rung in over 1,000 years, not since the last time the dwarves of Thulgrun faced extinction, and tonight it would ring again. The Black Bell Tower sat at the deepest junction between the upper holds and the molten depths. It was carved with winding staircases, flanked by pillars chiseled with the names of every king who had fallen below the stone. Most dwarves feared this place. It was a place of mourning, a place of endings. But Tharôkh the Silent stood at its center, both palms laid against the cold base of the tower, listening. It still holds, he whispered. The tower, the bell. The resonance is strong. Merla stood nearby, stringing her crossbow in silence. Will it call them? They'll hear it, Tharôkh murmured. Every worm, every troll, every stone in this mountain will listen when it tolls. The dwarves worked quickly. They wove pressure lines through the lower shafts laced with fire powder, set to collapse tunnels in sequence. Each trigger would be struck not by flame, but by echo, a percussion of sound. Tharôkh tuned each one personally, adjusting the pitch of each rune chime, the length of each metal pipe. When struck in order, they would create a melody of collapse, guiding the enemy exactly where they wanted them to go. A trap that sings, Merla had called it. No, Tharôkh said, smiling. A song of war. Just after the 9th bell, of the surface watchtower, though no light reached this deep, the tremors began. Trolls. Lots of them. Tharôkh crouched at the mouth of the southern shaft, hand against the ground. 7. 2 heavy. 1 with a limp. The lead has a club, ironwood. Merla blinked. You can hear that? Echo carries weight. Then the walls began to hum, a low, molten roar. The Wyrms were coming. The dwarves waited in silence. 20 warriors, light armor. Blackened steel, no torches. They stood like statues, breath slow, hearts pounding only in thought. Tharôkh stood among them, not at the front. At the center, listening, mapping, commanding by echo. The first troll charged into the Black Bell Hall, its club raised. Tharôkh struck the stone 3 times with his hammer. Tack, 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 a chain of runes lit, a pressure line triggered. Boom! The side tunnel collapsed, cutting off the rear of the troll formation. Now they were trapped. The dwarves fell upon them. Axes sang, shields slammed, but this was not open war. This was a sculpted ambush, a battle by design. Tharôkh struck again, twice, then once. Another chamber collapsed behind the enemy. And then he turned toward the tower, raised his hammer, and struck the base of the black bell. Bedtime. The sound was not loud. It was deep. A vibration that passed through the stone, not over it. It moved like water, like gravity, like memory. Every dwarf within 100 tunnels froze and heard it. Every troll howled and turned, and in the molten chambers below, the Wyrms opened their eyes. The fight surged, but the dwarves were ready. For every charge, there was an echo trap. For every brute, a rhythm counter. Tharôkh never shouted. He struck stone. He tapped walls. He guided with silence. Marla moved like wind through a forge, her crossbow bolts tuned to whistle at low pitch, confusing the troll's ears. Hreldi guarded Tharôkh's back, using a shield made of copper and ashwood, its resonance loud and disharmonious, driving the cave beasts into fits of confusion. And through it all the bell rang again. Dom! And again, each time deeper, wider, older. Suddenly the new sound, a shriek of molten fury, a Wyrm nodded too. Bursting from the southern flank, huge, burning, furious. Their wings scraped the stone. Their eyes burned with hate. The trolls fled before them, scrambling in panic. The dwarves braced. Marla whispered, "This is it." But Tharôkh stepped forward. Hammer down, head up. He struck the stone one last time. But not a battle rhythm. A song. Tack, tack, tock, tack, tack, tock. The echoes rolled. The Wyrms paused. They heard it. The song of the Heartforge. One of the Wyrms roared and flew past, circling, but the other landed before Tharôkh, towering, scaled in obsidian and amber, smoke curling from its nostrils. It lowered its head. Its voice, low, rumbling, came not from mouth but stone. "You carry the mountain's voice." Tharôkh did not flinch. "And you carry its fire. Why do you wake us? Because your flame is burning blind," the Wyrm hissed. "You dare speak judgment, blind one?" He stepped forward, hammer raised, not as weapon but symbol. "We are not here to burn, nor are you. The Heartforge is not a throne, it is a memory." Silence. Then, "You listen, better than the others. But words will not stop war. Fire has been kindled." Tharôkh lowered his hammer, then let it burn truth, not ash. Behind them, the trolls had fled. The other Wyrm landed beside its kin. Together they watched, waiting, listening, and the black bell rang one final time that night. Dam! And its echo whispered through all the halls of the Underdeep. "There is still a chance." Wyrm speak. After the battle beneath the black bell, the stone halls rested in a tense and sacred silence. Not from fear, but reverence, for the mountain had spoken, and now it would listen. Tharôkh sat at the edge of the deep chamber, one foot tucked beneath. Him the other stretched toward the warm stone floor. The Heartforge hummed softly in the distance, casting orange light that flickered like a living breath. Before him, in the quiet heat, lay 2 Wyrms, not curled in threat, not coiled to strike, but resting, watching, waiting. They had led him here without words, just presence. A path of echo and rhythm through molten tunnels and carved silence. No dwarf had ever walked these chambers and returned, but Tharôkh was not just any dwarf. He had no eyes, only echoes, And here that was enough. The larger worm, its name unknown, but its echo song, deep and rumbling, lowered its great head to Tharôkh's level. "You are not made for flame." Tharôkh bowed slightly, placing his hand on the stone. "Nor you for stone. But here we are." The worm's throat pulsed with a tremor, not quite a laugh, not quite a growl. "You listen as the old ones did." Tharôkh tilted his head. "The old ones? Those who forged without greed, who sang the mountain into shape, not for gold, but for rhythm." He inhaled slowly. "The first masons, before kings, before thrones, when stone was sacred." The second worm, smaller, sleek with firelight scales, circled them slowly, its claws clicking on the obsidian. It spoke in a higher-pitched resonance like silver bellows. "We sleep to remember. But you wake us to war. Why?" Tharôkh placed his hammer beside him, resting both hands on the warm stone. "I don't seek war, but others will come. Not just dwarves, men, elves. They'll see your fire and fear it." The worm stopped. "Then they will burn." "No," Tharôkh said softly, "because I will sing first." The Heartforge chamber opened like a black flower of stone, its walls carved into layered petals of basalt and rune-veined steel. The anvil at the center still hovered, pulsing with the rhythm of the mountain's core. The worms circled it as priests, around an altar, and Tharôkh listened. He touched the floor, he tapped 3 times, then twice, then once. The forge answered, not with fire, but with memory. He saw them, in sound, in vibration, echoed shapes of dwarves long past, hammering not gold, but truth. Each blow of their tools had been a note, each strike a chord. Together a symphony of stone, and beside them, yes, Wyrms. Younger then, smaller, but present, watching, listening, not enemies, partners. He gasped. "You worked with us." The large worm closed its eyes. Long ago, when stone sang, and the earth welcomed both flame and hammer. What happened? The smaller worm's resonance grew sharp. Greed. Kings forgot the melody, sought treasure, dug too deep, claimed the Heartforge as a weapon. We fled, slept, waited for silence to return. Tharôkh bowed his head. "I'm sorry." Silence, then. "You are not the one who must be." Outside, tremors echoed again. Not battle, not steps marching. The dwarves had mobilized hundreds. "They come," Tharôkh said, "my kin, ready to reclaim what they see as theirs." The larger worm turned its gaze on him, eyes ancient as the first flame. "Then we must speak through you before fire speaks louder." He was led slowly, reverently to a stone dais carved into the floor of the forge. Beneath it, a tunnel spiraled into blackness. Not a mine, a memory shaft. Each step rang with echoes not his own. Dwarves, Wyrms, old chants, a language of strike and tremor. He walked downward, guided by sound, as the walls pulsed with warmth, until the silence changed. A chamber opened, spherical, perfect, and floating at the center, suspended on air and song, was a stone. Black, small, shaped like a heart, glowing with a fire that flickered not on its surface, but inside it. The echo core. The cool Heartforge's soul. Tharôkh approached. He knelt, his hand hovered, and touched it. The sound filled him. Stories, names, songs of every dwarf and worm who had touched this place. One note above all, harmony. He stood, eyes closed, hammer in hand. He began to strike the floor in a rhythm none had heard in millennia. Tuck, 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 Tack, tock, tack, and above in the halls of the dwarves, the resonance bloomed. The mountain shook, not in fear, but in awakening. The Wyrms lifted their heads. The dwarves stopped in their tracks. Every echo whispered the same truth. The Heartforge was not a weapon, it was a covenant, and it had just been reawakened. When Tharôkh returned from the chamber, the Wyrms bowed, not in submission, but in recognition. You carry more than echo now. I carry the first song, Tharôkh whispered, and now it must be sung to both kin and flame. The collapse of the fifth hall. The fifth hall had not seen fire in 5 centuries. Once a thriving place of crafting and trade, its great pillars now leaned cracked and moss-covered, its ceiling hung with the long-forgotten soot of forge fires long extinguished. The dwarves called it Kalbarun, the Chamber of Echoing Hands, but tonight it would be renamed. Tonight it would become a tomb and a warning. Tharôkh stood at the edge of a broken archway, his hand pressed to the cold stone, reading the tremors through his fingers. 2 Wyrms, he whispered, one above, one moving directly toward the hall. Merla crouched beside him, already sighting her bolt through a hole in the stonework. How long? He listened. Less than an hour. Dulgrim stepped into the faint lantern glow behind them. Then we need to clear the chamber. Tharôkh shook his head. No, we need to bait it. Merla turned sharply. What? He tapped his hammer softly against the floor. The echo returned, quick and crisp. It's coming for the forge. Core, it wants the melody I played. It needs to know if it was real. Dulgrim frowned. So you want us to use you as bait? No, I want to use memory. They set it all into motion within minutes. Old forge runes were reinscribed into the floor with quick, expert hands, not for crafting, but for resonance. Massive drums, salvaged from the Black Bell chamber, were moved into place around the central platform. Each strike would echo like footsteps, each note like a forge being reborn. Tharôkh stood at the center, hammer raised, and began to play. Tack, 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 tock, tack, tock, tack, tack, tock. The song of the Heartforge rippled outward. Melody lost to time in the deep tunnels. Something answered. A howl, but not wild, not angry. Curious. The worm entered the hall 30 minutes later. It slithered from the side corridor like a living river of obsidian and fire, its scales glowing with a dull internal heat, like coals waiting to blaze. Its eyes glowed a molten gold. The dwarves watched from the shadows, silent, breath held. Merla had a clean shot, but she did not fire. The Wyrm approached Tharôkh slowly, head lowered. You are not the singer. Tharôkh nodded. No, I carry the echo. The Wyrm circled him. Why wake us? Why summon memory? Tharôkh stepped backward, deliberately toward the center platform. Because memory is being forgotten. He turned, struck a final chord, and dove to the side. The trap sprung. A hammerfall of echo-tuned explosives detonated along the chamber's ceiling. Boom! Rock cracked. Pillars snapped, and the worm shrieked, flames bursting from its mouth as it tried to fly. Too late. The entire fifth hall collapsed inward, floor, ceiling, all, a geyser of dust, flame, and debris roared up into the upper shafts. The worm's scream echoed once more, then was swallowed. The tremors echoed for minutes, then faded. Silence. Ash settled like snow, and Tharôkh stood again, covered in dust, breathing slow. It's done, Merla whispered, but Tharôkh's face was tight. No, that was not the Worm Lord. That night, as the dwarves pulled back to the deep halls to recover, Tharôkh sat alone at the edge of the old cistern. He placed his hammer on the stone, and listened, a new echo, faint, deliberate. "You dare silence one of mine." Tharôkh closed his eyes. The Worm Lord was awake now. Not curious, not sleeping, but watching. In the tunnels far below, in a chamber filled with molten light and bone dust, the Worm Lord uncoiled its immense body, its scales shimmering with memory and rage. It spoke into the roots of the mountain. "The dwarves have forgotten the song, let them now learn the flame." The Silent March. The collapse of the fifth hall had silenced one worm, but awoken a far greater threat. The Worm Lord, nameless, ancient, vast, now stirred in the lower magma veins, and with it the trolls had changed. No longer chaotic brutes, they moved with order, strategy, purpose. They had begun to hunt. Dulgrim pored over stone maps lit by ember runes. "They've cut off 3 tunnels already. They're guiding us, herding us." Tharôkh ran his fingers along a shallow crack in the wall beside him. "No, they're listening. We taught them too much." Merla tightened the strap on her satchel of runes. "Then we stop singing." Tharôkh nodded. "No war chants. No steel, we go quiet. We walk the stone as it sleeps." Reldi chuckled nervously. "You want to sneak past an army of trolls and a wormlord?" Tharôkh turned toward the dark corridor ahead. "I want to guide them, where they least expect." They called it the Silent March. No boots, no torches, only soft glow ore in cloth wraps, and footsteps measured by breath. They traveled through Vein Pass, a collapsed prospector route that hadn't seen dwarven feet since the War of Wrath. The walls were lined with ancient glyphs half lost to ash and tremble, but Tharôkh could still read them. Each glyph pulsed faintly when passed, a warning, a memory of something hungry below. The company was 15 strong, scouts, saboteurs, and stone runners, each trained now to walk by sound, not sight. Tharôkh led them, fingers brushing walls, ears tuned to every creak, every echo, every shift in pressure. The deeper they went, the tighter the stone became, dense, heavy with heat, and something breathing in the dark beyond. On the 3rd day, they found the bones scattered along the edge of a tunnel, half melted, fused with blackened stone dwarf skeletons, and troll remains, and deep claw marks. Reldi swallowed. They fought each other here. Myla frowned. Why would trolls attack their worm allies? Tharôkh crouched beside a massive claw scratch. They weren't allies. They were subjugated. The Worm Lord does not lead with pact, it rules by fire. He stood, face grim. And now, it needs no one. The mountain's pressure increased as they neared the final chamber, the Heartforge spiral, where lava veins converged into a vast crucible of rune metal and myth. Their goal was not to win a war, but to reach the forge before the Worm Lord and awaken it fully, to bring forth the oldest song of stone and fire, not as a weapon, but as a balance. The night before the final descent, the company made camp in a high alcove above a collapsed tunnel. No fires, only whispered breath. Tharôkh sat apart, his hammer laid across his lap. His fingers tapped slowly on the stone. Tok. Tok, tok. The reply came, not in words, but in rhythm. A worm was close, but not moving. Watching. Merla approached quietly. You think they'll follow us? Tharôkh nodded. They already are. She sat beside him. And when we reach the Heartforge? We sing. She smiled faintly. And if that doesn't work? He looked at her. Then the mountain sings last. In the deep veins below, the Worm Lord stirred. Its body coiled like a living fault line, its wings folded along tunnels like roots through stone. It had not spoken in ages. But now, it listened, and it heard something old, not a threat, a song. The dwarves made the final descent in single file. Vein Pass narrowed to a hollow spiral, dropping into magma-lit void. Tharôkh tapped the wall softly as they moved. Each tap was a tone. Signaled a reminder. They were not here to fight, but to awaken something that predated fire itself. They reached the Heartforge at dusk hour, though no sun marked the time, and there it was, floating once more in the center of the great crucible chamber, the core, black stone, flickering with fire within, waiting. As they crossed the bridge toward it, the air changed. The stone grew hot, not in temperature, but in tension. A shadow passed behind them, a wing, a breath, then a sound like thunder drawn through teeth. The Worm Lord had arrived. The company froze. Merla raised her crossbow. Tharôkh did not. He stepped forward, hammer in hand, eyes closed. He placed the hammerhead on the floor of the forge and struck once, twice, then tock, 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 tock. The sound filled the chamber. It echoed through tunnels and molten halls. The Worm Lord roared, not in rage, but in recognition. Its voice filled the mountain. Who wakes my silence with forgotten song? Tharôkh stood tall. I am Tharôkh of Tholgrun. Blind in sight, echo-bound, I carry the mountain's first breath. Why speak now when the world is full of fire and war? Because not all fire destroys. Some remembers. They pause. The forge pulsed. The Worm Lord lowered its head, vast and burning, until it filled half the chamber, and whispered through the stone, then let the forge decide. The core flared. A low, deep chime, no louder than a heartbeat, shook the chamber. Stone cracked, fire rose, and the Heartforge awoke. The hammer and the flame. The Heartforge burned without heat. Its light filled the crucible chamber in slow pulses, deep red, then gold, then white, like a heartbeat long forgotten. Its sound was not a roar, but a hum, so low and wide it seemed to rise from the bones. Tharôkh stood alone on the bridge of stone. Before him the Worm Lord, behind him his kin, silent, waiting, breathless, and in his hand his hammer, not raised in defiance but in harmony. The Worm Lord's voice trembled through the air like a landslide wrapped in whisper. The forge sings. But what does it sing for? Tharôkh lowered his head. Not for dominion, not for ash, but for truth. And truth is flame. No, Tharôkh whispered. Truth is balance. Flame remembers. Stone endures. The Worm Lord's eyes narrowed, ancient fire swirling behind its golden gaze. Then strike, dwarf. Let the forge decide. Tharôkh turned to the echo core. Its light dimmed slightly, waiting. He stepped forward, placed his palm upon it, and listened, not for a command, not for victory, but for the first sound the mountain had ever made. It came not as thunder, but a drip, a spark of heat in water, a single, perfect note, the first breath of the world. Tharôkh raised his hammer. Dwarves behind him tensed. The Worm Lord inhaled deeply, wings flexing, and with one smooth motion, he struck. Dome! The echo shattered the chamber in light, not destruction but revelation. Images flared in the walls, ruined memories of the first masons, of Wyrms teaching dwarves how to shape tunnels that sang, of fire used not to burn but to temper. The Worm Lord recoiled in shock as its own past was poured back into its mind through the fire. It saw itself not as conqueror, but as keeper, a protector of song, not silence. Tharôkh staggered slightly, breathing hard. His hammer glowed at the head. The Worm Lord's voice faltered, "You remember me." Tharôkh nodded. "We forgot, but the stone did not." The worm turned its head to the molten vent behind the forge. Then let it be written again. Tharôkh stepped forward, holding the hammer to the core. It merged, stone folding over steel, fire cooling into shape. A new relic. A memory hammer. Now, Tharôkh said, voice low, the mountain must speak, not just to us, but to all. They returned to the halls of Thulgren dwarves, Wyrms, and even a handful of trolls who had survived the Worm Lord's grasp. No words were shouted, just drums. Soft. Even a signal. The mountain lives. The mountain remembers. Weeks passed. The Worm Lord vanished back into the deep, not defeated but understood. The Heartforge was sealed again, but this time not by fear, by song, and Tharôkh the Silent was no longer alone in the dark. They called him many names after, Stone Listener, Echo Wielder, Flame Binder, but he never claimed any. He walked the halls as he always had, staff tapping gently, head tilted, listening, because the mountain still whispered, and as long as he listened, it would never forget again. Breathe now, deep and slow, the war has ended. The worms sleep once more, the stone holds you as always. Thank you for journeying through the War of the Worms. If this tale helped you drift into dreams, whisper a small subscribe to our channel so you'll never miss the next story before bedtime.